This is your friendly spoiler alert from Marvel Makeup. MCU spoilers ahead.
Welcome to Marvel Makeup. I'm Quincy.
And I'm Kay, and this is a podcast where I teach Quincy a little bit about Marvel.
And I teach Kay a little bit about makeup.
Hey, Quincy. How's it going?
Can I just say you and I, okay, this week, we're not matching.
We are
but we are wearing Lakers color.
That's true. That is true. We are very, and you're giving very much like early Apple days, computer programmer from the 70s type vibe. I should
be in the next Steve Jobs movie.
Yes. And if you haven't seen the Steve Jobs movie, well, that's okay because that's all we're going to talk about. But we are going to talk about Marvel movies, which have come out and reveal information. So spoiler alert to anyone who has not seen.
Spoiler alert.
All the things that we're going to talk about today, specifically the one movie that we are talking about, The Incredible Hulk. Oh my goodness.
Which was so incredible. I actually really loved this movie.
Oh, cool. That is interesting.
Really? I'm so curious to know because I was like, I wonder if this is I am peripherally aware that I feel like one of the Hulks was not like popular or something.
There was another Hulk movie. Yes. That was directed by Ang Lee. That
I feel like I saw that one. I think I might have seen that one.
I don't remember. I remember it. It had Eric Bana in it.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's the one I saw.
This is not that one.
No. This
is the Marvel Studios one, which came out June 13th, 2008, was directed by Louis Leterrier. He also directed the Transporter movies and the first Now You See Me, which was like that movie about like kind of like cool, edgy magicians. Do you remember that movie? It had like Jesse Eisenberg in it. Well, he directed those movies as well.
Okay.
And this movie. So, yeah, it stars Edward Norton as Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I loved. I don't know. So there's a point when I'm watching it and I was like, there's that scene where he's in the soda factory and then that one girl like gives him a look. And I was like,
the one girl who's absolutely gorgeous, of course, because all women must be gorgeous in Marvel movies.
But like she looks at him and is like, oh, he's cute. And I was like, you wouldn't think he was cute. And then I was like, he is kind of cute. And then I had to ask myself, like, is Edward Norton a basic white man? And
I feel like he has that, you know what he does? He has that classic boyish type look. I feel like, when he was like a teen, if he was like in a romantic comedy, which he probably has been at some point, like he was probably the friend of the girl who she's in love with him. He's in love with her, but doesn't say anything because she actually likes whatever other guy, and he's the one that talks to her about her love life.
He's like sensitive and stuff.
Exactly.
I don't know. All this to say, I was like, okay, if he's a basic white boy, I guess like I'm in.
Well, I mean, he does give off that. I guess he does give off that vibe. But here's the thing: he's like. He's the kind of like opposite version of like, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Tony Stark's like ladies man, very chauvinistic and like out there. He's very introverted, very shy, and doesn't want to necessarily be, he's not like a person who's like, yes, I want to be out there in the fight,
Maybe my childhood self who was very much like that is relating to him. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, and so here's the thing. For me, this is a movie, of all the movies, this is probably my least favorite. Just in the sense, because I've seen it the least. And
interesting.
And the reason why is because it was, at the time, I still didn't know that this was going to be a whole universe thing. So I didn't know. And Bruce Banner isn't like, the Hulk, he's not necessarily a character that I immediately am just like, oh, I remember like he wasn't a known superhero to me. I mean, Iron Man wasn't either, but like I felt like Iron Man was such a moment. And then Hulk was kind of like, and here's the next one we're gonna throw at you guys. And so it didn't like at the
resonate time with you.
Yeah. And I think because I had just seen the Ang Lee one, I was just like, oh, I just went through that whole story. I don't need to see it again.
Got it. Well, so two things. Speaking of you just saw the Ang Lee one. I saw, because this was on Amazon, and it was the only Marvel movie that wasn't on the Disney Plus.
Right.
And then Amazon has that cool trivia, and they were talking about how the rights to this was owned by Universal. So I wanted to know, is that why it's not available on Disney Plus?
Yes. So Disney didn't buy Marvel until the next year, 2009.
I see.
So, and I think the reason why, like, the whole rights issue is because, Hulk is one of those characters that has had a lot of like properties made out of it previously. And I think because of all of those other like projects, they still don't completely specifically control the character.
Yeah, like the Universal owned the rights to Hulk because they had produced the TV series prior to.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why it's still kind of in this kind of like nebulous zone, which is why for me it is one of those kind of like on the outside type movies that's not like so weaved into the whole MCU. I mean, just the fact that Edward Norton doesn't come back as the Hulk later on in the later movies.
I'm aware that he doesn't play. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Sidebar, I just think it's amazing that they had Iron Man and this movie come out at the same time.
Same year. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, was it partially because the rights were owned by different people? Or like, do you know anything about that?
I know what? I don't know exactly what it is, but all I can just think at this time is just like, since at the time it wasn't such like a, since they were still in the beginning of it, like they didn't maybe have as much power over like how they wanted it released, all that stuff. I'm sure there's so many places on the internet where this is totally explained, but like, I don't know the intricate details. I just remember my experience of how I received the movie. Yeah. And remembering how I received it when watching it again, because this is another thing. When I first saw this movie, I think I had not watched it from the beginning. So the whole like credit part where like they're actually showing you the backstory of the Hulk during the credits, I think I had missed that.
Okay. So that's what I was going to talk to you about was like, again, the Amazon trivia thing pulled up and they said Edward Norton rewrote or once he got the script rewrote it or edited it. And so I guess that trailer part was was the backstory. And I thought that was such an interesting way to introduce the backstory of a thing without taking up movie time.
Yeah. And I think his whole kind of like, justification for that was like everybody already knows this already.
Yes.
So like we're just gonna show it through the credits and then get to the actual like, story part, which is an interesting choice because the first movie of every superhero franchise, it's usually like the origin story and how they got their powers and all that part. But he was like, no. There's been the TV show. There's been all these other things. We're just going to get to where I want to start the story.
Yeah. I felt it was much grittier. Like that opening sequence really set you up for how gritty it was. I also thought it was so interesting color wise. There was a huge, I'm sure if we were to do a deep dive on color motif, like that whole trailer was like very dark, very, had this green tinge.
Right.
And then throughout the movie, I noticed there was a lot of there's like the Mr. Blue, Mr. Green.
Yeah.
Betty even refers to the pizza the dish she wants as Mr. Pink. So I thought that was very interesting that that color motif from the jump was throughout the movie.
When it comes to color, he is known as the big green guy, so it is kind of like a piece of his character that is kind of everyone kind of associates with him. It's like, oh, he's getting angry, so he's gonna turn green.
But here was where I thought was interesting though, was he was in red throughout most of the movie. He is in red most of the movie. He's in a red jacket. He's in a red shirt. He's in a red hat. There's a lot of red throughout the movie, and then a lot of like primary colors. And then, I'm sure, again, if we were to sit down and rewatch it, there's moments where like he'll come from like a red setting, and then he'll walk over and it'll be very blue. And then fight scenes will cut in between very dark greens and then like gray blues. It was very interesting to just watch the color schemes and palettes that they used.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's not something that necessarily popped to me.
Stuck out to you?
Every director, I guess, it makes kind of like everyone was kind of like you starting at the very beginning of the MCU, like filling out how they wanted to tell these stories. And I feel like that's how that guy wanted to do it. One thing I wanted to point out, which actually relates to Iron Man as well, because I don't think we mentioned it. Do you know what Stan Lee looks like? When I say Stan Lee,
yes.
Okay, great.
Sorry, that was loud. Do I know what he looks like? Yes.
And you know that he is pretty much the father of Marvel because he was
and he makes like the cameos.
Exactly. Well, did you catch his cameo in this one?
Yes.
Okay,
it was the soda scene.
Yes.
I thought it was so funny because when I saw the soda scene and it was green, I for some reason thought it was hot sauce. I was like, oh, is it hot sauce? I kind of like this. I don't know if it's on the nose, but like, is it hot sauce? Because Hulk gets hot and like gets angry and like spicy. And then it was soda. And I was like, well, why couldn't they have done the hot sauce? And I was like, oh, I guess it's cooler for Stan Lee to like drink the soda and like not put like hot sauce on a taco and then eat it. I don't know. That was just like the rabbit hole my brain went down.
Okay. Because it was like coming from Brazil and you're just like...
It wasn't even that. It was just, I think I just had Chipotle. I had Chipotle last week, and one of the favorite salsas, I only ever get the green sauce, the green Tabasco from Chipotle.
And is that hot? Because
it's not even that hot. It's sweet. And that's the only time I ever have that green Tabasco. And so I guess having seen that and I saw the bottles, I was like, oh, green hot sauce.
Okay. So we're coming to the conclusion that residual Chipotle can influence how Quincy sees movies.
Yes.
So good thing to know. Good thing to know. So if down the line you're just like, for some reason I was thinking about tonkatsu when he did that, and I was like, did you have tonkatsu earlier?
Yes.
You'd probably be like, yeah.
Tonkatsu actually sounds amazing right now.
So we'll still have to watch out for that. But so I mentioned that because last time I forgot to mention that he has a cameo in the MCU movies, every single movie. And in the first one, do you remember seeing him in the first one? It's very quick.
I remember seeing him because I am aware Stan Lee makes cameos. For the life of me, because my memory is a goldfish now, I could not tell you off the top of my head. But if you told me, I'd be like, yes. Okay.
So as a reminder, he plays Hugh Hefner because Tony Stark is like walking around the party and he's like, hey Hugh, and then he turns around and Stan. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he always plays these I do remember that. Speaking of Stan,
I just think it will be like a fun kind of Where's Waldo that we can play.
Yes, because I love that. Two things. One, I also noticed the pizza shop that Bruce Banner goes to is called Stanley's Pizza, which was so funny. I was like, oh, look at that. Speaking of Iron Man, I went back and watched the credit.
Okay, the after credits?
After credits scene. To be honest, I had finished the Hulk and waited for their after. Well, I feel like on the Amazon one, they didn't have one.
They didn't have it. Yes, I feel
like their after credits. It wasn't
after credits.
Say again.
I didn't know on that one they didn't have the after credits because technically, I think what had happened when it originally was in the theaters was that last scene
was the after credits scene.
I think so.
That's what it felt like. Okay, so seeing that after having seen Iron Man, I was like, what? Like that was great because as I was like watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this is like, I wonder if they're gonna do like a crossover thing. And then like when Tony Stark walks in, I was like, what? Because I didn't know it was going to be like that direct, and I had just seen Iron Man, 1 or 2 weeks ago. So then when I saw the after credit scene with Samuel L. Jackson in
Which
Iron
you watched
Man.
after the Hulk, right?
Yes, after the Hulk.
Okay. So yeah, you were kind of spoiled yourself a little bit because they mentioned.
It just didn't. Well, it still worked. It still was a nice surprise. I think it's because one, I am aware of Samuel L. Jackson being what's his name?
Nick Fury.
Nick Fury. I always it's a very like stormy name.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, I am aware of that. So it wasn't as impactful. And I think too, the reason it didn't hit as hard was I'm not sure if I've ever seen, like, and I guess this is the excitement of the MCU, is another character from another movie be in another character's movie.
Right.
You know, so Samuel L. Jackson just felt like a new character they introduced, like a new plot point versus Tony Stark showing up in the Hulk's movie was like, what? I just saw you in this other movie and why are you doing it? So that's what was really exciting and cool.
I see. So that seed was had a bigger impact because you had, it was more prevalent in your mind versus you had never seen Nick Fury before.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And that kind of brings into the fact of like, this was the second movie that this happened. So that this was kind of like revolutionary at that point of just like, wait, what? Yeah. Oh, they're trying to do this. Okay. Like that's what made it like the extra little bit interesting. And it's the very beginnings of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to say that like we've come so far from that moment and things have changed, but they still were able to thread stuff. And just like to harken back to kind of what we talked about before about, as we go into these new movies, there's going to be, talk of like different universes, different timelines. So even though things may not necessarily quite line up, like the fact that, Edward Norton doesn't come back and play the Hulk, that the characters do show up in different places. And even though the storylines don't specifically align for me, and I think for like, depending on what your niche of the MCU is, like it's all part of it. So we shouldn't focus so much on like, well, that doesn't make sense. How come he's not so-and-so and he's so-and-so and he doesn't come back, like, because for me, like one of the things that that's kind of ongoing is with the whole, like the conversion of like the television thing about how like shows that came out before in these early phases don't necessarily line up with the current phases, specifically Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I see. Again, I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's one of my favorite shows, but it, as of now, like its timeline doesn't currently line up with the current MCU. But to me, I feel it is part of the MCU because there are so many specific seeds that do cross over into that series. So that's my little Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rant because I love the show so much. I love it.
I think part of the reason my mind got blown so hard too is as I was watching this, I was aware of it being a universe. And I know eventually like everyone comes together, but I think part of the mind blown moment was like, I literally, as I was watching this, I was like, I wonder how like, meanwhile, is Iron Man Iron Manning as we speak?
Right. What's he up to?
So then as it's wrapping up, I'm like, what is he up to? How far in the future or past is this? And then to see that transpire on screen while as I'm writing notes was part of it. I was like, what? Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Well, and the next one is Iron Man 2. So we do come back to it. And I feel like, again, it's up to you to kind of like, that's where kind of your imagination can happen, which I think is fun. Like, I feel some people are on the other side. They're like, well, if this happened then, and then that means this happened at this point, and that doesn't make sense. But it's like, no, that's where your imagination and like, what happens in between, like, is up to you. And it's just like, worlds keep happening, and they don't necessarily have to tell you every single story, or you can just make up your own stories and, have fun doing that. Yep. But in terms of, the Hulk, I kind of mentioned so many things that happened in 2008 last time. So like this time I was like, oh, I kind of ran out of things to mention because it's still in the same year it got released. So I just wanted to dig more into the fact that like it was released in 2008 and some of the other movies that came out that year. were Kung Fu Panda, Wall-E, Love Guru. That was specifically in the month of June.
Kung Fu Panda came out in 2008.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda feels like it came out like yesterday.
Oh, really?
I don't know why.
I mean, there were sequels to it too.
Yes, it just feels so not old. Like Wall-E feels very like, because I remember watching that in theaters and like that. I don't know. I guess Wall-E is anchored in a very specific place in my head, and Kung Fu Panda just seems to have like always been around like recently.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. It feels.
They've turned it into TV shows and other stuff like that. And then like just some other things that were other movies that came out that year. Dark Knight actually came out that year, and that was the highest grossing movie that year. Yeah.
Girl, I just did the Batman trilogy.
Oh, you did?
Dark Knight. The
Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale?
Oh my goodness. Sidebar. We're watching Heath Ledger. I'm watching Heath Ledger, and I'm like, he was 26 when he did that movie.
Yeah. So young.
He was 26 and he passed away when he was 28. And then it was a trip to be like, I'm older than you.
Yeah.
It was such a trip. I also remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, wow. I did not know that. All those movies came out at the same time. Wow, that was like a kind of like a very big movie year.
Oh, it was. And so it's so kind of like interesting to think like that's, Dark Knight is Batman, which is DC, the other kind of like major comic book universe. To know that they were having kind of that moment at that moment while MCU was just kind of beginning, kind of like shows you how kind of like fluid like the times can be. Like they were having those epic, like they were on top at that moment. But now since then things have shifted, so things are so different now. So I just wanted to like mention that because that was, I thought that was a very interesting tidbit. But we should dive kind of deeper into Hulk.
Okay.
I feel like it is Bruce Banner's story. His whole thing, kind of like the thing about Bruce Banner is like he's always on the run. So I don't know if you noticed, but there were just a lot of scenes of him like trekking, hitchhiking, walking.
Yes.
So that's kind of one of the major themes.
I love that how the movie throughout, just especially with the location in Brazil, how cramped everything felt, and like with him essentially being like an animalistic beast thing, it was very interesting because it's constantly about trying to like corner him, right?
Yeah.
I thought
keeping his heart rate in a very specific, a certain amount, so he doesn't go outside of those, that heart rate line.
Question with the heart rate thing, it doesn't matter why his heart rate goes up. It's just as long as his heart rate goes up.
Yeah, I believe so. In the logic of that movie, as long as he stays under like 200, like he's good. So, but as soon as he goes over, that's when he starts converting.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I think also what I appreciated about this movie was like he was very much on a mission to kind of like control it and at this point like trying to get rid of it. So like he wasn't necessarily trying to understand how to like live with it, which is an interesting thread that they kind of explore later on. But in this movie, his main focus was to be like, experiment, try to get it out, try to talk to Mr. Blue and have him figure out like how to get rid of it. Yeah,
at that point, I remember at one point, I can't remember, like towards the latter half of the movie, I was like, bro, you just got to go like to a monastery, like
yeah,
like or just get really good at meditating,
or find some show you really, really like and just put that stuff on a loop and, veg out.
Can I say though, on the flip side of that, okay, so for some reason, I love Liv Tyler. I love me some Liv Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
She is just so captivating on screen. And I realized she essentially kind of plays the same character as like in Armageddon. Like she's like ethereal daughter who has like the scary dad, and she like fights for the guy. I loved her when she was yelling. That one moment when they come out of the cab and she screams, I was like, because she's always like, Bruce, you know? And then for her to like scream, I was like, I could listen to her, watch her Hulk out all day.
Yeah. I really like, for me, I like it when women get like emotional, like violently emotional, because it shows that they're just not like the damsels, you know. It's like, I want to, you know, I know what I want to happen, and I have a voice in the situation. And yeah, for me, the moment where she like yells "Dad" like at the tank, and
I wasn't even thinking that. I was when she yells at the cab driver. Because she yells at the cab driver for driving too fast. That's where I was like, "Yes, girl, yes." Sorry, it wasn't the dad.
It wasn't the okay. No. So it wasn't the emotional father-daughter emotional relationship moment. It was her yelling at the cab. Okay, yeah. Got it.
But sorry, go on. You about the dad and the cab.
So for me,
tank.
her emotional arc really shined when she was standing in front of a tank and being like, "Dad, I know you're in there." Like,
that was cool.
Yes. I was like, "Yes, girl, call him out. This military man who has just one focus, you know, change his path." So for me, that was the moment she shined. But speaking of supporting players, that's so funny. Speaking of supporting players in this movie, you have some great little tidbits. You actually have the guy who plays Phil Dunphy. What is his name? I'm totally
Ty Burrell. Okay, Ty Burrell. No, Ty Burrell. So yes. I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, Ty Burrell's gonna be in this.
Wait, in the credits? Okay, at the beginning.
Not the credits. The opening sequence.
Okay.
I was like so excited.
Like, he was in that.
No, so he was in the beginning. So I forget. Wasn't he in a movie where he plays like an evil Nazi? Or I don't know if that was a sketch.
Maybe.
So I was just waiting. I was waiting for his I thought he was going to play like a villain maybe, because I don't know how far into the opening sequence his name pops up, but it popped up and I was like, oh, if they're going to include his name, like he must play a very big role.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay.
I mean, he's the other guy, you know?
Yeah. It was great seeing him, just to see him in a drama like a movie that's dramatic, since I know him from Modern Family.
Yeah, and be such a comedian. Well, for me, I was very proud of. I was, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, okay, oh yeah, he's the other guy, but Bruce Banner's going to show up, and she's kind of going to like be all back into that, and so. I kind of felt bad for him because she things switched so fast, and she was like, I'm kind of like all in now with the, with Bruce, even though he's been gone for all this long time. So I out loud while I was watching it, I was like, poor Phil Dunphy, more like Phil Dumphy.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh my God, that's such a dad joke. But I was so proud of myself. I don't know why.
Kay, I love dad jokes because I cannot make pun jokes to save my life. And I actually actively try to make pun jokes and I cannot land them.
Okay.
So I admire that.
So that's was my contribution to the Phil Dunphy moment. I was like, more like Phil Dunphy.
Yeah. I loved
that made me giggle though.
That's so funny. I loved his moment with the dad though, when that confrontation scene was very nice, just like how he told him off without telling him off. Yeah.
And he was like trying to do you realize he was just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And more about the supporting cast. You mentioned that you had read a little bit about the TV show version that came out in the past.
No, it was just the Amazon trivia. They were just like, just so you know, that was towards the end. In
the TV version, the actor who played the Hulk was Lou Ferrigno. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but did you notice that he is also in the movie?
Yes. Yes and no. So Amazon trivia. Amazon has this function called X-ray.
Okay. No, so if you're learning everything from Amazon trivia.
Well, seriously, because it was like it popped up, and I am familiar with his face, but it mentioned like he was the only person who's ever been in the movie twice or something, and I quite didn't understand that. I was like,
What does that mean? He was in the movie twice?
I think he was like in the original or something. He was in the series, and then he was also in this movie, I think.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. I that makes sense. Yeah, he's played the character twice, I guess.
Yes.
So, or in 2 Hulk properties, I guess that would be what that means. But yeah, he played the security guard who, like, you know, he's like trying to get up to the top stairs, and he's like, oh, if I give you a pizza, and he's like, okay, I'll take the pizza, you know. So that's kind of like an Easter eggy type thing. Another thing is the kid who is like in the computer lab when Edward Norton is in the lab, he actually comes back later in the MCU. I don't want to spoil it for you, but
yes, I remember seeing him.
Yeah. His name is Martin Starr. He was from Freaks and Geeks. I don't know if you watch Freaks and Geeks?
I haven't seen Freaks and
Geeks. He's more of a comedic type actor too, but he actually will also return as well. So it's really cool. I don't know. It's so interesting how like there's very specific people who kind of come back, but it's like, but Edward Norton
doesn't come back.
Yeah. So, but that's why I say again, like it's all part of it, and like, you know, if you were to have enough imagination, it all technically can work.
Yeah.
In terms of
speaking of the trivia stuff, with the Mr. Blue stuff too, I guess that I read it too quickly, so I could be saying this wrong, but the Mr. Blue character, he like plays the same character name in Reservoir Dogs. And so someone was saying it was like a nod to Reservoir Dogs with the Mr. Pink, Mr. Blue, and Mr. Green.
I think that's a thing as well. Like, I don't know specific about it, but I can see how that could be related because they do mention color so much, you know?
Yeah. Does that come back later?
I don't think so. Not based on my knowledge. But, you know, it might come out again. I might notice it this time around since, you know, I noticed so many more things last time watching Iron Man. But like I said, like, I'm not as on top of all the specifics of this one just because I haven't seen it as many times as the others. It's the one that I like. Even this time I realized I hadn't seen the whole thing because when I originally saw it, I don't think I saw the opening credits.
Got it.
Which is where, you know, they go through all the origin story and all the backstory of how he got his powers and stuff like that in a very like visual kind of like, you know, a quick way.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was the fact that, you know, when you pointed out technology, you know, in the first one, I kind of paid attention more to that, and it was such a kind of like it was such a kind of like a glaring difference now, especially because of all the sciencey stuff they were doing, like in the lab where like you had him lay down and you had all those computers and he straight is like kicking the computer. You're just like, you want to do that to an LCD screen now? Like, what are you doing, guy?
I thought though the computer technology in this movie, even though they came out around the same time, was better and it stood the test of time because I think they were using less like real household application-y stuff.
Okay.
Right? Like the encrypted old laptop, like that still felt in line. Like when they're in Mr. Blue's lab, he has all that technology gear, but I think because
like old school computers though.
Yeah.
Like, you know, bulky head desktop screens.
Yeah. And it just seemed more like, the technology didn't bother me as much. I did crack up though when they got that guy on his cell phone.
Yes.
And the cell phone was like this tiny. Yeah. And I was like, look at us now.
2008. Well, I guess technically like 2007 because they would have like shot it like a year before. But like it's not that long ago. But, you know, to see things have progressed so quickly since then, that was another detail. I was just like, oh, that did stand out more to me this time.
Yeah.
Because of our conversation last time.
Yeah.
And just, you know, just the fact that, you know, in terms of technology, they were starting to use like motion capture for the Hulk and for the Abomination character. And so those were like the first type of, you know, applications of using that as well. I know they use it a lot in like Lord of the Rings. I can't remember when those movies came out, but to me, just watching it, I was like, oh, this was probably very kind of like on the earlier side use of like motion capture technology. That's the whole thing where like they'll put on, you know, suits that have like all the ping pong balls.
Yes. Lord of the Ring mocap. Yes. Lord of the Ring, the first one looks like it came in 2001.
Oh, wow. So yeah, so it's a progression from that as well.
Yeah.
And but you know, the fact that I feel like in Lord of the Rings, it was kind of like specifically like circus because he was like Gollum, you know, whereas this was like kind of the main actors doing that stuff as well.
Also, I thought the CGI for this held up really well. I don't know. I didn't finish, but I saw like the first half hour of the Lord of the Rings, and it did not age well to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read all the books when I was little.
Oh, really?
But it was like, I know we're not doing a Lord of the Rings podcast, but just in terms of CGI, it felt very cartoony.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them recently. I've listened to podcasts about them, but I haven't seen them recently. But it'd be interesting to see like, and I think what I know about those movies too is that like they have like very specific releases where they had like a lot of behind the scenes features where they talked a lot about how they made it. So it'd be interesting to see those clips. Like I'm kind of like less interested in the movie, but more interested in like how they actually made it. Like give me the feature.
I mean, because it's a lot of time.
Featurettes.
I think it's because it's interesting. Like, again, Amazon trivia, Amazon X-ray helping me with this. It took them a year to build that scene, the blood dropping scene in the Hulk. And I was like, dang.
Yeah.
To set that. Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. And now we have whole movies like where those type of shots are like the whole movie. Like when you think about like all the animated movies that come out now, your Frozen's, your Moanas, you know, all those Disney animated movies. So that's kind of like, that's the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, you know? I loved it. I actually really loved it.
Oh, cool.
I really loved it. I'm curious to see how it stands with the other movies. Sidebar, when the helicopter almost goes in flames and he like claps the flames away, I was like, sick! Just because it was like, just because it like made sense. It was such a like logical, like, duh. I don't know. Just when he did that, it was like sick. And then when he actually finally does the Hulk smash into the ground, like at the end, I was like, fuck yeah. Sorry, I just cut myself. I was just like, wait, are we cussing on this? Regardless, no, I love those two moments. I was just like, I don't know when he did that that clap. I literally was just like, wow, that's so great. I loved it. I don't know. I love the movie. It was emotional. It was edgy. It was like fun. They were like, I don't know. It was just a good movie.
Cool.
Thoroughly entertained.
Well, I'm so glad that you liked it. Yeah, and I really liked it too. Again, I would say it's still not on it's still on the lower part of the list for me in terms of all the MCU movies, but it was nice to kind of like go back and see it and actually kind of see it for the first time for me because it doesn't stand out in my mind as like an MCU movie.
See, I'm curious to know if I'm going to end up saying this is my favorite MCU movie and it's like the least MCU movie.
You know, that happens, and that I think that would be awesome, honestly, because it shows you can see things from totally different perspectives, and like you know, it's all entertainment and all supposed to bring joy. So you know, feel free to enjoy and you know, get from it whatever you know it gives you. Cool. So that's the Incredible Hulk, guys. That brings us to the end of our Marvel portion. Before we jump into our makeup portion, it's time for Stretch and Share.
Stretch and Share.
Where Quincy and I are going to share a stretch and then talk a little bit about our week. Quincy, I'm going to start off the stretching first.
Great.
And you can share about your week. And
great.
You picked the stretch last time, so I'm going to pick the stretch this time.
Great.
And this time, I just want us to do a little bit of the hand, pull the hand back, and like a little bit of the wrist swinging. Because, you know, when you're typing in on your computer a lot, as we are nowadays,
yes,
you need to keep those fingers and hands limber.
So for you listeners out there, what we're doing is extending our hand out and then gently pressing the fingers back. And then you can do it the other way and you'll get a nice stretch.
We're also rolling our wrists.
Yep.
So as we do that, Quincy, share a little bit about your week. How was your week? Do you have any highlights?
I think it's not necessarily a highlight, but I have a sty in my eye.
Okay.
Oh, wait, you know what? I'll turn this into a positive. I learned that if you have a sty in your eye, I know that you can do warm compresses, but I learned if you go to Walgreens, by the way, I'm not being sponsored to share this, but if you go to Walgreens.
Yeah, no one sponsors us.
No.
For anything.
There's a saline eye solution you can get to help clean out your eye. So I've been using that and it's helped tremendously. And I'm hoping, I've had it all week. It sucked. But it's just about gone, thankfully.
Well, that's good. That's good. Awesome.
Yeah. So now I know if I get styes in the future to go to Walgreens and get a saline wash.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to know, like, if it's something you never had before, now if you get it again, you'll know how to like deal with it. Versus I feel like the first time anything like that happens, like health wise, you're just like,
yeah.
You know,
and that's why I look like someone who should be in a Steve Jobs movie, is because I have these aviator dad glasses on, and these are actually real. Okay, let me show you. Look at how thick my lenses are.
Wow, that is pretty thick.
Do you see?
I know about thick lenses. Those are pretty thick.
Yeah, wow. So this is also why I look like a Steve Jobs character, and then I'm wearing like a collared shirt under a sweater. How about you?
Well, I wanted to get a little topical this week because, you know, we are recording still at the end of January, and this week was the inauguration of the new leadership for the U.S. And I will just say, like, it was incredibly cathartic to see Kamala Harris being sworn in as the Vice President of the United States, first female, first African American, first Asian American. And specifically, you know, people worked so hard to get Biden and Kamala Harris elected. One of those people or groups was this one called Run AAPI, which is specifically geared towards turning out Asian voters. And they have like
by the way, I've been quiet, guys, not because I am not happy about this, but I've been silently what is this, baby clapping? Golf clapping?
Yeah, golf clapping. Yeah, golf clapping.
Golf clapping as Kay speaks.
Yeah. Here's a really great moment, and one of the leaders of that group is Chloe Bennett, who is on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So there's a Marvel connection there, and they hosted like an inaugural like live stream event where they had all these like Asian celebrities kind of like give their congratulations on camera. But one of the parts of that kind of live stream that really hit me was by Nick Dodani, who's he's an actor. He's Indian and more of a comedic actor. He's like on Atypical, and he was on the reboot of Murphy Brown. And he told this story about how when he was younger, he actually interned for the firm that fought for marriage equality in California. And he talked about how once it was re-legalized, because there was Prop 8 and then it passed and then they fought to repeal it. But once it got re-legalized for LGBTQ people to marry, they kind of like, they rushed the city council's offices and he immediately started seeking marriage licenses. And when a couple went to one in LA, they were denied at the window. And so they're like, well, this just got passed. Like, we should be able to get these licenses now. And what happened was one of the organizers was with the couple while they're at the window. And they're like, okay, give us one moment. And they got Kamala Harris on the phone, because she was the Attorney General of California at that time. And she was like, hey, they're not issuing licenses yet. What can you help us? And she was like, yes, put the guy on the phone. So they got the supervisor, and Kamala Harris on the phone was just like, start issuing licenses now.
That's amazing.
This is now legal. Do it. And the guy was like, okay. And so like the fact that like in that moment, like this is now our vice president, and she has been helping, expand rights for underrepresented people, for this long, and to see like relive that moment, was just like very very emotional and very kind of like inspiring to be like, oh look, she's been doing this, and now she's even doing this on a even grander level,
bigger. Yeah. I saw a sign when they became president and vice president elect near my neighborhood. Someone called her Mamala, which I loved. It's a very big deal. I was like strapping in for something insane to happen last Wednesday.
Everyone was,
yeah, and it was so nice that like nothing happened on the first day of it. Was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. We were able to do it peacefully, and now we're in a new era, and there's much work to be done, but it was that specific moment really hit me this week, because it really kind of like it reminded me like, oh yes, like this is work that has been happening. She has been doing it. She will continue to do it. And now it's, it showed the trail in which she had traveled. And I realized like, oh shoot, I remember that happening. Like, I'm from California. I lived through that election where I voted in that election where I voted against Prop 8, but then it ended up passing anyways. And then they had to go to the courts. And then, and then I remember people dancing in the streets when it was repealed. And to see that moment of her playing her part in that moment was like really inspiring, and just made the whole kind of like, this next step seem that much more like, important and historic. Yay! So that was our stretch and share. And
so now we are going
to our makeup
portion. Now, today, Quincy, do you want to tell us what item we are going to be applying today?
We are going to be looking at concealer today, which is pretty apropos considering that the Hulk had to conceal himself for most of the movie.
Exactly. What? He had to hide his anger. He had to like stay in hiding, because to reveal himself would create unsafeness. So he had to conceal himself. And so we shall be concealing as well.
I have mine as well. Just so you guys know, concealer is a color corrector, and it's what's the difference between concealer and pigment? Why don't we just put concealer all over our face? What's the difference? It's just heavily pigmented, and it's specifically to even out dark circles, large pores, age spots, and other visible blemishes. People sometimes will go 1 to 2 shades lighter to hide these dark circles. And let's begin.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you know, so here's the thing. I did a little bit of research. So there's arguments for, do you apply concealer before or after foundation? And so today, and then Kay, I want to hear about how you felt about using primer with your foundation this week. But before, so concealer, I actually put my concealer under before I put foundation over. But in doing a little digging, people were saying put foundation. Where are my notes? To put it over, actually. I can't figure out. There was a reason why. You only do it. I can't read my handwriting. So so actually we'll do a little bit of an experiment today, since you are barefaced today. After you put the primer, you'll put on the concealer, and then do that for this week with the foundation throughout your meetings. Today, I actually have foundation on, and I didn't put any concealer on. So I'm going to see what that looks like on me today.
Okay. Cool.
Just to see if it feels better the other way.
I will like to point out though, based on what I see, I can't necessarily see what the concealer would be concealing, because based on my view, you look pretty much, your face looks pretty even and flawless.
Oh, this is true. Maybe. Well, it's the foundation. I'll show you where I usually apply concealer.
Okay.
So for those of you guys, wow, I am so blind, guys. I just took off my glasses so I can apply. And I am so blind.
And you also have bangs, so I don't know if there's anything underneath your bangs, but
that's a good idea. So
you're concealing
pre bangs, I would put a little dab of concealer here, just because it would can look inflamed, like red. But I don't do that, and I also do. Wow, I am so blind.
Has a stick.
Yes, mine has a little wand and a sponge. I'm using. I didn't know it was cream. I thought this was liquid. NARS creamy concealer. Just a lot of, just to be honest, like cool teenage beauty bloggers were using it on Instagram. I was like, let me try to look like them. So what I'll usually do is I'll put it on my under eye, just a dab. Okay. A little goes a long way. You don't want this. This can cake and build up. So this isn't like the primer where, you are like, oh, let's put a lot on. Because this will show up on your makeup if it's too much. Okay. I have a little bit of redness in the corners of my nose. So
yes, I have that as well.
I'll target here. So guys, I'm dabbing my concealer wand on the nose. I have like an old nose piercing scar here. Not a scar, but I like to hide that. And I have some redness.
Is it like closed now?
It's closed now, but it's like, it's like a little spot, and then I have like a little redness here. So that's how I will do.
Honestly, I can't tell, but yeah, I will. Okay. we'll you have a brush that you're using.
Yeah. Yes, so I will use a brush. You can use a brush. You can use a beauty blender. You can use a sponge.
Can you use your hand?
And I would recommend using a brush, just because you'll be able to buff out the product.
Okay.
So I will go here, and it'll just kind of.
Well, why don't you? So I need to get a brush. Why don't you keep talking about concealing while I go get my brush?
Great. Sorry, and I should have mentioned it too. Like, to me, it was like, use a brush, but then I forgot that I'm teaching you.
No. Okay. So keep going on about concealer for the audience.
Great. And then while Kay steps away, I usually, if you really want to go intense, you can create triangles under your eye with the concealer to kind of follow the shape of dark circles, but my dark circles actually don't go that deep. So I actually just go right under. And guys, for those of you guys who are tuning in via YouTube, I am so blind right now, but I can't wear contacts because my sty. So I'm kind of flying dark. I was just going over, Kay, how with the concealer, I don't have very large dark circles. So I'll just put a dab and just kind of apply the concealer right underneath my eye, right? But if you were to like really wanted to get those dark circles, you would create like a triangle, kind of like here, if your shadows are really dark and deep. The idea being is the concealer, if you're using especially like a lighter shade, when it hits the light, it reflects the light off. The concealer will reflect light, so it gives the illusion of removing your dark shadows.
Okay. All right.
Makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, so this is it. I don't know if it did anything. Now I'm just wondering if I just need to put foundation on.
Well, it looks the same on it. From my point of view, it looks a little bit the same before you applied, which I think is kind of good because that means it does rub in. So let me go ahead and start.
Yes.
Oh,
and if you can multitask, Kay, can you tell us how using the primer worked?
Yeah. So since we last recorded, I have been using primer underneath my foundation when I go on Zoom calls. I did find that, it did help with the redness. It did feel like I felt like I wasn't putting as much foundation on those areas because there wasn't as much redness to cover up. So I think it did help with that. What I am interested in now, since we are using concealer this week, is about evening out my face. Because I feel like even though I put the primer on, it took down the redness, but I feel like it still didn't even things out, because then the stuff that wasn't red, which, I think concealer, or the dark spots, which the concealer was for, those do you feel like
the primer also helps set your foundation a little bit in terms of like, it wasn't like wiping off as much, and like the product stayed on your face a little longer?
It did feel less heavy throughout the day. I feel like
it wasn't just like sitting on your face.
It didn't feel like I didn't feel like sweaty, I didn't feel like it wasn't as like mad. I didn't feel like it was matted as much, I guess. So I'm gonna put on the primer first. I've been putting it just like directly on red areas and a lot on my forehead, because I have spots on my forehead. And then I just quickly looked up before after concealer application. What they're saying is the internet is saying is the risk you run of putting concealer after, if you put it on before, is that you'll just move the concealer around your foundation when you apply foundation. It seems like the general consensus seems to be is if you have a concealer that is also color blocking. So if your concealer had like green pigmentation to again help with to reduce the redness, you'd apply that first, then the foundation. Okay. Well, I have primer that's supposed to reduce redness.
Yes.
How does that factor?
I think it all helps. We're going to apply the concealer first today. And then I think throughout this week, Kay, maybe experiment with what seems to work for you. Try the concealer before the foundation and then try the concealer after and see what happens.
Okay. And so just to recap, concealer after makes it so you're not just rubbing the concealer around
when you're applying foundation. Yeah. But you still have to like buff it. You still want to buff it in so that it's not just like not a white, but like, a spot of makeup sitting on your face.
Yeah. I guess knowing that, like, what's the advantage or in comparison the difference of applying it before, or is that just because you always thought to do it that way?
For me, I think I was taught, and also, okay, you can put the primer over your face too, since you'll be, you don't have to
like lotion.
Not lotion, I guess like lotion, but like you can apply it since it's also supposed, like the foundation, it's supposed to help create a barrier for your face, and it's not body treatment. You can apply it to your entire face.
Okay. That's good to know. I thought I was supposed to just do it on the red parts.
No, you can do it to your whole face.
Okay.
I think watch like the tween come for me and be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, listen.
We'll have time to correct. Yeah.
I'm learning just as well as you. I never said I was a makeup artist.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not the epitome, ultimate Marvel knowledge fan, knowledge-wise. This
is just girls helping girls.
Based off our knowledge and our experience, we're sharing how we know how to do things. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Great. The primer is I've primed my prime. The face,
You've primed your face.
Yes.
Primed your face with primer.
It's funny that primer is like a makeup word, because I feel like it's very science fiction. Like Prime, Optimus Prime, like the Prime.
Also, primer. I just have sometimes I have flashbacks, because isn't primer like prime calculus word too?
Yes, it's a calculus word too. Prime numbers.
Yeah. Let's do this concealer.
Okay. So this is my concealer. It's Smashbox High Definition Concealer.
Oh, that's a very good concealer.
It was probably what I bought the last time I had to do something theatrical or on camera. And people were just like, don't forget to buy concealer. And I was like,
you can do like a little dot.
Okay. Yes.
And then use your brush.
Okay. So it doesn't have a wand thingy. So how should I apply it, with my finger or with the brush?
Do you have? I would say use your brush because it'll help you be more accurate. And so if I were you, I would dab.
So I put it on the brush. That's
great.
That.
Oh, and you and I have matching brushes. Look at that. Look at that. And then let's start with your under. Where do you want to start? Let's actually go with what your flow is.
Let's do forehead, because as you can see, I have these dark spots. I also have like a red. I have a bit of a red spot now.
So I think you could just go up there and just like lightly brush. And obviously, doing this in front of a mirror would help.
Yeah.
I think that might be a lot of color, Kay.
Okay, sorry, I'm using too much.
Yeah, and then, so why don't you use some of the brush? So Kay right now looks like she went to like reverse Ash Wednesday because it's just like a white smudge on her forehead. You look so cute. You can use some of the brush there and use the pigmentation to go and target your under eye if you want.
Okay. I'm trying to wipe some off and put it on my under eye.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Relax your forehead because that's creating wrinkles.
Okay, relax in the forehead.
So if you want to get your under eye, Kay, you can look up and gently brush like this.
Looking up.
Yeah. Okay. Look up
and gently brush.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't look at myself and look up at the same time. So I should look up.
Or what you can do is if you're using the mirror, Kay, you can do this. You can look down and do that.
Look down. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. That's
Tuck your chin in. Yes.
And I'm hitting the mic with the brush. Okay. All right.
I think you might have. Okay. So for. I think.
Okay.
Sorry. It just looks so adorable right now.
Did you ever see that Star Trek movie where it's like they were like covered in white like dust? I feel like I'm like that. It was like one of the newer Star Trek movies.
I think for your
I like the under eye though.
Concealer yes, like you can be a little less generous with your
so don't use as much. Okay.
Yes, mostly because you're going from your under eye to your cheeks now. and you really So that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Because you're just laughing. So typical. You just look so cute right now because there's so much concealer. There's just so much concealer on your face. I'm sorry. You should have explained it better. Sorry.
These are fun tears. Just
I'm also tearing up. So
I use too much.
Yes.
I think we've established that.
Because your under eye, you don't have to come all the way down here. You just really want to kind of think of. I'll send you a diagram too. You want to kind of think about just right here. Just that, and that's why the brush is important. And maybe your brush might be a little thicker. You just want to get it under here. Under. Is that not where I'm doing it? Sorry. Sorry. I don't mean to laugh. Yes.
Well, now my face is going to be extra red now because I'm laughing so much.
Okay, I think what you want to target is the little poof under your eye right here.
Okay, the poof.
Yes, and not bring it so down. But also, I don't even know if you really need it.
No, I do. I get pretty saggy. I get pretty saggy, baggy eyes.
Okay, so then just kind of target that bag area and not the whole don't pull the concealer all the way down. You just want to kind of target that bag area.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like this one looks good.
Yes. You've got the gist of it.
This one, but the left one's not.
Yeah, and I think with the foundation will help with that too.
Okay. So what about this? What do we do here?
Okay.
What do we do here?
Are there other areas that? And this is what I mean with Do I don't smoosh it around your forehead?
I'm trying to take it off so I can put some other places.
Do you want to?
I don't want to get more.
Sorry,
I could get more, but that might just make it crazy.
No, don't. Okay. I just didn't know concealer was going to be this funny. So instead of trying to wipe it off, Kay, can you try to like pick it up with your brush and then use that area to
pick it up with your brush?
Sorry.
I mean, okay, yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good. That's good.
Okay.
And then is there a different target area?
Well, my chin is kind of usually chin is usually a place too.
You can just gently very light.
And now I think we've talked about this before, but like, how do you ensure that you're actually spreading it around and not just like rubbing it so long that it's just like it's now coming off?
Okay, so I just want to point out really quick, just to answer that, this will be like a way to answer your question. Do you see how already on your chin you have some and you haven't been applying it for that long?
True, yes.
And so this is one of those products where a little goes a long way. And I think instead of seeing it as a paint that you need to paint, I think light little strokes like this
will
help. I think right now you're really rubbing it in.
Yeah.
And I've noticed when I see makeup artists
coloring. Yeah.
It's not about coloring so much as you can always build, right, with makeup. So start with a little bit. You know how like with the foundation, the primer week last week, you were like, oh, let me add a little bit more. Right. So you can always add. I've noticed when makeup artists work on my face, they're always very light. It's very light. It's never like they're pushing their brush into my face. It's very feathery and light. Because if you have a good brush and you have good products, it'll, and see, your chin is great. You haven't even put that much on, and I can see that it's applied.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, and the goal too with the concealer, Kay, is not to like cover your whole chin. Is just to get those like, just that like just the spot.
Okay. And then there's kind of one here too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your brush might be a little bit big because now that I'm seeing it in proportion to the spot, I think your brush is wider and that's why you're getting more surface area covered on your face.
So is that like a different, so I use this brush to apply my foundation. Is that the same brush you use to apply your foundation?
No.
So you have two different brushes.
Yes.
One for concealer, one for foundation.
Yes.
Okay.
Just because the size, like if you notice here, it's a small brush just so I can get into smaller places, right? Because your spots aren't like taking up your whole space, your whole face, right? I mean, they could, I guess, but like, that little spot on your face, you don't want to use a whole big brush to cover it up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's more like pointillism. Like
yes, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, the Sunday in the Park with George. That's how I know about that stuff. Like the bit by bit.
And then again, I just want to point out with the little dot on your face, how little product it took to cover that little spot. But see how wide it is? It doesn't need to be that wide. Like the diameter of it's covering is way beyond the actual spot.
Okay. I guess the reason why, that makes sense that the smaller brush, like if you were to show me what your brush looks like, they look the same.
I mean, am I a YouTube artist yet? This is what all the YouTube artists do. This brush is, I don't think your brush is that much thicker than mine, but it does, or maybe you're just not used to using the brush yet. Maybe it's because you're coming at it like directly here versus just like this side.
Okay.
So it could just be that too.
Now. I was doing it like flat on, not like just the tips.
Yeah, just use you just use what you need of the brush.
I will say, even though I've caked it on the up top here, I still really see this kind of red spot.
It's okay. Because you're also, and then the foundation will go on too.
Yeah. Okay. I'm putting a little bit more on just to see what would happen.
But also definitely pay attention to how much product you put on. Excuse me. And then putting foundation, and just notice if like, because the other thing is you don't want it to look too cakey, because if you keep caking the makeup on, it'll create creases.
Ah, okay. And creases aren't good.
In terms of like, you don't want to look like you're wearing too much makeup unless that's the look you're going for.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was very informative, and I feel like there's this I went to this like conference when I was a kid for like student government, and they did this exercise where they had one person talk another person through how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
This is what that feels like. I've done that exercise.
Yeah. But then one of them blindfolds themselves, and they have to like tell them how to do it again, and they have to be really specific. Yeah. So that's
what I learned very quickly.
This is that exercise.
Yeah. But also you're also
as
learning.
As soon as I put a big thing of concealer on my forehead, you were like, whoa.
Yeah. I think too, it's just, this is your first time doing this, so it's not like a peanut butter sandwich you know how to make. This is like literally your first time. For next week,
supposed to conceal, so I was like, get conceal.
Yeah, it might be, just to definitely play around, see,
how much it takes, I think.
Well, so with how you have on now, I'd be curious to know what your face looks like after you apply foundation. And then vice versa. Like if you put foundation, are there less spots that you need to cover? So then you'll naturally use less concealer. Do you get what I'm saying? And then you can figure out.
Yeah, I will say this is probably the most even this area of my face has looked. Probably since I put a bunch on. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. I feel like trying to think what my first Zoom is. It will take some extra time though. So I'll have to make sure just to plan for that. Yeah. But thank you so much. We have done it. Of course. We have used concealer. We have used talked about the Hulk and how he had to conceal his presence from the world for so long.
Also, guys, seriously, please, if you guys are purely audio audience, that's fine. But please go to the YouTube channel just to see how cute Kay looked while she was applying. You look so cute. Like you look so cute. It was I couldn't.
I mean, I am a baby in a sense of just putting things on my face and seeing, is this how I'm supposed to look? It looked great. It looks great now that you've like buffed it out. It looks even-ish. Well, yeah. But it's all a process. We're just building, just like the MCU. We are building one story on top of another to create a full universe, and in my case, eventually a full face.
Yes, we are marveling and makeup and what?
Yes, is that happened? Well, that brings us to the end, and that is all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for listening and or watching. And if you'd like to reach out to us
or find out more about Marvel and Makeup, you can follow us on all social media at Marvel and Makeup, or you can email us at marvelandmakeuppod@gmail.com.
Yes, and please rate and review and subscribe wherever you're watching us or listening to us, wherever you find your podcasts or your YouTubes.
Please give us 5 stars or we'll never hear the end of it from our Asian moms.
They will be so disappointed in us.
So disappointed.
So thank you so much. We'll catch you next time on Marvel and Makeup. Marvel and Makeup is hosted and produced by Quincy Cho and Kay Kanapu. Quincy is an actor-writer based in Los Angeles, California. Kay is a writer-performer for Filipino AF and an alum of the CBS Diversity Sketch Showcase. You can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Quincy Dinosaur and at Kay Kanapu.
The music for Marvel and Makeup was composed by Clarence Yap and our artwork was designed by Patty Lin. You can find them on Instagram at Clarence_Yap and at pattylin.jpg. See our show notes for even more info. It was a lot of giggles today, but also it was just so funny because you were so bold with it. You were like so committed, and you went, Pat, and I was like, nah, too late.
I was like the Hulk punching myself in the face.
I
I am concealer.